It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Let's move on to Chris's question. He says, how much should I spend in total on cars for our family? I know Dave Ramsey's rule is less than 50% of your household income on items with motors in them. He's also familiar with the 23/8 rule, which maybe we could go over. That's our rule, but is looking for some more guidance on the total value.
So here's what I think is interesting, Brian. A lot of folks say, oh, automobiles, I mean, we say they're napalm. They're napalm for your financial situation. So you should always buy the most affordable car, and you should buy a beater, and it should be a few years old. But Brian, I'm gonna ask you a question. Is it okay if someone wants to go out and buy a Mercedes, or if a Rolls Royce, or a Bentley, or a Lamborghini, or fill in the blank on the ridiculous car that someone might want to buy? Is it okay for people to buy expensive cars?
Well, the answer, I wish you wouldn't have thrown out like Rolls Royce or Bentleys or something like, because that stuff makes me just like, ooh, I don't know if I'd do it that way. But it's but the answer is yes. You know, I think it's not. I do. By the way, I've seen Dave do that, and I'm very entertained. He did an interview with Bobby Bones a few years ago, and I was amazed at how he could just throw out things like that when they were asking him questions about cars. I think he even might have had something about boats and jet skis.
Anything has a motor should be less than 50%.
Fascinating, and it was fascinating. But here's what I would say where we're a little different is that I think it more falls where you are in the financial order of operations. Because remember, you're on a journey to building wealth. And the thing, I just don't want you to do things out of order. Because if you do things out of order and you go and buy the fancy car, because I always talk about the three components of wealth building is that discipline to live on less than you make. So discipline's number one. And that discipline creates money or margin that you can actually go put to work. And then the third component is, of course, time. You need to have enough money for compounding. What people fail to talk about is that a big component of time is timing as well, is because if you go buy the Corvette at, say, 25 versus the average age of Corvette buyers, which is like 61, you quickly realize that the impact on your long-term walk towards wealth is all askew, because you'll figure out that, you know, that money that you spent on that nice car could have worked much better growing in your account. So that's why it's not a percentage of your income. It's more of a part of your journey. And I would tell you that probably comes up with step 8 of the financial order of operations, where you are prepaying expenses and other things, because you've got the 25% of your saving, automated wealth building already occurring. You've already got your cash reserves locked down. You've got all your debt locked down. That's where I fall with this. It's not as a percentage of your income, because we already have built into the 23/8 that if you're buying an expensive car, you have to pay cash for it or pay it off within 12 months. So that's the same as cash. So that we've already kind of put some guardrails up. I'm just trying to make sure you don't forego retirement savings and other things that actually create wealth, not make you look wealthy. You need to make sure you get that down first.
And so it sounds like, Brian, you're describing two different areas or stages of life. If you're someone young, accumulating in the early stages, make sure you're adhering to 23/8. And that's across all the vehicles that you own, right? All the vehicles that you own, the service on those should not be more than 8% of your household monthly gross income. So that falls inside the 23/8. But even when you are later in life, and maybe you do have the ability to pay cash because you're higher income, you want to make sure that foundationally you've built enough wealth that it's okay that you go buy that Tesla or that BMW or that Mercedes or fill in the blank, but you want to make sure you're not doing it to the detriment of your overall financial plan.
I will say one more thing on this is because once you get to a level of success where you can afford to do this, I would challenge you, because I always now find myself thinking about it's not what you spend, it's what that money could become. Because when you get into spending $100,000 for a vehicle, I start thinking about, because when we do commercial real estate or other things, I'm like, man, when I put $100,000 invested into something could generate this much for me, that's also a mindset that I would challenge you to, because it will keep you honest, because you will get to a point where money doesn't matter. It's just a tool. And maybe buying a nice car, if you're worth $10 million, $15 million, who really cares if you spent $150,000 on a vehicle? But it's going to keep you honest. If you're one of those people, maybe you're only worth $1 million and you're thinking about going and buying a $100,000 car, it really ought to tinge in the back of your mind, what is the opportunity cost of what I'm walking away from by buying this expensive car.
I love it.